Welcome to the Evolve Podcast. Evolve Podcast is an open forum on personal growth and cultivating a positive mindset. I'm your host, Joe Fitzpatrick. We are happy to be back, bringing you amazing conversations with an incredible lineup of guests. It's all about putting in those reps to get better at doing this podcasting thing and share more great conversations with you guys from people that I admire and who are prioritizing personal growth in their life.
Welcome to the end of Season 2 of Evolve Podcast. I'm your host, Joe Fitzpatrick. It's been a wild ride this year since starting production in August 2023, and I'm excited to wrap it up a year later in August 2024. I've learned so much about podcasting and improving the quality of my show. There's been some technical difficulties, and they've helped me to do better the next time. Each episode was like a brick being laid in the foundation of the powerhouse the show has the potential to become. In Season 2, I moved my podcast studio out of my apartment kitchen and into our apartment complex clubhouse, which my wife greatly appreciated. Unfortunately, that meant frequent interruptions from people coming in and out, which I did my best to edit around. I apologize if anyone is caught off guard by those beep noises and slamming doors. I guarantee that will not be an issue in future episodes, as I have moved the recording studio to a more private location to prevent interruptions. I learned so much wisdom from my guests that shared the space with me, both virtually and in person. From overcoming self-doubts and suicidal thoughts, cancel culture and imprisonment, career changes and rising to achieve goals, inspire others, and evolve their lives with fresh perspectives. I pulled clips from each episode to share with you some of the insights that I gained from my guests, and I hope they leave a mark on you to make the next evolution in your life. Thank you to all of our guests from this season. I love talking with you about your journeys and sharing your stories. I'm looking forward to closing this chapter and coming back even better with Season 3 in 2025. Enjoy the show.
One of the most special moments of any wedding planning is the vows, right? So my vows that I wrote and Suzanne wrote were very personal to us, and a lot of thought went into it. And I was able to reflect on my life up to that point, as well as what brought Suzanne and I together and what keeps us together. And ultimately it came down to our decision to keep showing up for each other, our decision to love each other, to choose each other, and how we have chosen each other over the years and continue to choose each other and to choose loving ourselves as well for the life that we want and the life that we know we deserve.
Each one of these tasks, like before you wrote 3 tasks, like I like that each one of those is badass. Like if you go swim 1.2 miles, that's really impressive. Like what the fuck? Why are you doing that? If you go bike 56 miles, that's like nothing to sniff at. Yeah, that's a good ride, right? Yeah. You go run 13.1 miles, that's huge, that's big. So I think I really love that. Yeah. I love that each one of those is like super badass, and putting it all together is like, look at what I can do. Look at what all these people can do. Like look at what the human body is capable of. Look at what Look at this, like, wow, right. You know? And you mentioned before, like, running and training by yourself is, like, not super fun. And I definitely agree, because the social aspect of training is awesome. Like, that's chef's kiss. I love that. Like, we get to, do this fun shit together. And I love running by myself or biking by myself or swimming. I think an aspect of the half that I liked so much is that it's hours of moving meditation. Like you're surrounded by people, you're surrounded by this, beautiful environment probably. But the whole time you're like, okay, how do I feel? I'm checking in with myself. What do I need? Am I good? Okay, I'm starting to panic. What do I need to calm myself down? Okay, I'm starting to feel loopy. What do I need? Like, the whole time you're just with yourself, and I liked that. I really like being able to do that through the movement, all 3 different tasks.
I think a lot of people look at what I have going on and they're just like, oh, Sam's doing it all. Well, no, Sam's not doing it all. Like, there's a team behind me. Like before we started recording, you mentioned like right now I'm hiring a manager to handle my speaking engagements. Like, I'm constantly looking to add to the team, because I heard P. Diddy say this one time. He's like, the hustle is hiring other people to do the stuff that you don't want to do. Like, that's the game. Like, ultimately, longevity for me is I just want to teach and be a public speaker. Like, it's fun for me to develop businesses and do this and that, but like my ultimate passion is just, doing the public speaking. So I got to pull as many people in to the system that allows me to focus on those things that I really want to do. But typically, to answer your question, like, weekends are typically off market for me. Like, it's rare that I'll do something work wise on the weekend. That time is for my family. I may run over a little bit here today, but typically I'm home every night, no later than 6:00. And I get that time to focus with my kids, with my wife. She typically will go to bed a little bit earlier than I do. So I may get a couple emails out or work on a proposal or something like that after she goes to sleep. But 5:00, that alarm goes off. I'm getting up for the gym and I'm ready to do it again.
It's like so much of the education system is based on what to learn.
Right.
Whereas learning is based on how to learn. So it's like, if you get those skills, you can apply it to, just about anything that you want. And, one of my favorite, I guess it was a speech at Harvard by Ralph Waldo Emerson in the mid-19th century. He talks about the problems with education, and you'd never guess they're the same exact problems that apply today. And it's like, he says there's a difference between genius and drill. So genius is pure. This is when a kid wants to learn something, so he seeks out, or she seeks out, people who can show them that thing. And then drill is like the practice of it. So it's like grammar and math facts and things like that. So what has happened in the education system is the focus has become on the drill, like doing the thing, prove that you can answer this question correctly, A, B, C, D. And it's like, all the genius is stripped away from it, and I don't know, I get into this like cynical kind of view, is like all that is based on control, and it's like, we got to teach kids to like think creatively and take risks and break that whole notion that, you have to learn XYZ in order to get a good job. It's like,
right.
I don't want perfect moments. I don't want pose. I don't want these things. I just want you to be you. And I think that's what I can bring to the table as a photographer is, even if my pictures aren't award-winning quality level, which I think my pictures are pretty damn good, I bring a certain energy to the situation. And I think that is where my value lies, period.
There's a song by a band called Stick to Your Guns. And it's like, oh man, that band really did something for me when I was like, coming into whatever. And they had like a combo. It's like Sufferer and then La Ponderosa, the names of the songs. And it says something about like, this is going to get dark, but it's like, if I died, at least I stood to face the giant, And I think back to that a lot. Like, that meant a lot to me when I was like 15. And it's like, it's still like a part of me.
What does it mean to you now?
I think it's just about like standing up to whatever you gotta. I think everybody has like a thing they have to do. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Whether it's like art or, personal stuff, or, even if your mission is to like sit on your couch, that's a choice. And so like whatever the giant is, face your fear.
Mother used to tell me for 3.5 years straight, pack your bags. She told me every Sunday and every Wednesday, you done packed your bags? And I was like, nah, I get to it whenever. But it was more of a faith thing. She was telling me, look, pack your bags and expect to leave. She didn't force it or say it that way, but she said, pack your bags. During this time, I read the entire Bible. I read As a Man Thinketh by James Allen, Think and Grow Rich by, I think it's Napoleon Hill. And all these books told me
Yeah.
that they shared with me that she knew something. So what I did one day, after I wrote the book, did all the artwork, I packed my book bag full of stuff. And this was the stuff I was going to leave with. But every day I would walk over to the R&D door and look out the window and see myself leaving in my mind. And 6 months to a year later, round about the time Kim Kardashian and them started fighting for prison reform. And I left prison 6 months to a year later. And that was a point where I got to see, when they said, as a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. That's in the Bible. Anything that you think about, you can become. I ain't talking about like a bird or nothing. Don't try to lie. Now, but what we will say is that somebody thought that they could fly, the Wright brothers, and they
Right.
did.
Yeah.
So it's more of what you apply your mind to and how far you shoot it that things will change.
The medical team that cared for me, they are ultimately the secret sauce that contributed to me being able to recover from this so well physically. But then I really attribute my mental recovery to my yoga practice.
How your yoga practice helped your mental recovery?
Well, I guess to start from even just kind of like the grossest to the most subtle aspects of that. First, it was my breath, coming back to my breath. Being in immense pain can often make people hold their breath. Yeah. And so just for me and my yoga practice, I wasn't able to move my body at all. So yoga didn't look like stretching or what we would call asana was totally out of the question. But coming back to the breath, even in maybe the worst moments of pain, making sure that I was breathing fully and exhaling completely, just tracking my breath from top to bottom and coming back to it really helped me to, first off, oxygenate my body and my brain so I felt physically better, but then also helped me to stay present with what's actually going on instead of all of the like storytelling of like, my life is over, I'll never do X, Y, and Z again. Like, you can really spiral into some super, super negative self-talk in moments like that. And when it's accompanied by immense physical pain, it's just so much negative input. But being able to just stay with my breath afforded me the ability to stay calm and stay collected and stay present in reality. Like, what am I actually experiencing? Not what am I imagining that I'm experiencing? So I think the other part of the yoga practice experience for me through this accident has been coming back to my values. So I've been practicing yoga since I was 17, around 17. And for years I was just going to yoga class and I wasn't really getting that deep into it. But then when I took my yoga teacher training and I learned about kind of what Buddhists would call the Eightfold Path, or what yogis would call like the 8 petals of the lotus of yoga. There's the first 2 are the yamas and the niyamas, and they're basically how to live. It's ethics and suggestions on like your life will be better, your experience with yourself, with your community, and with your practice will be better if you practice these restraints and positive things. So there's things not to do and there's things to do. And those make up the yamas and the niyamas, which is kind of like the yoga values. And when I went through teacher training, I just really tried to kind of accept all of those things into my life as deeply as I could. I'm not a saint. I don't like think of myself as like a bodhisattva who's like enlightened, but I think that having those values and being able to reach back to them in times when you maybe have lost your way or you don't know which is the right direction, like coming back to what are the things that I hold to be true and what are the things that I really value in humanity and in my practice. Having a guidebook like that in the yoga practice helped me to wade through really, really challenging experiences and not lose myself and not lose who am I, who is the person who I want to be, and how do I want to show up in my community as that person. And so what that looked like for me in this accident was greeting my nurses by their names when they came into my room and thanking them for every single thing that they did for me, even if it sucked. Like having my like horrible road rash, like wound cleaning done. This lady named Fern would come in and like she would like pull these bandages off my road rash, and it was awful. I mean, just not something that you want to experience, but she was helping me. And so like for me, diving back into the yoga ethics of ahimsa, which is non-harming, is just letting people know that I appreciate what you're doing and not taking my pain out on you as my nurse, which I'm sure is something that they experience all the time. But ultimately, it was about them, but even more so, it was about me and connecting with who am I? Like, what do I value? Like, pain can be suffocating. It can literally rob you of all the energy that you have and all the willingness to be alive. I mean, you can literally find yourself in moments saying like, I wish that I was dead right now because of the amount of pain that all of these drugs that they're giving me is still not making it go away. But in those moments, I think coming back to, you know, values that I have like Siva, which is service to my community. This is something that I've lived by for, you know, the past 10 plus years working in the nonprofit industry, just the belief that I exist to create a better community. That is my purpose. Like, I exist to serve other people, not in a self-deprecating way, but in an uplifting way, that I have a positive place in community, and if I keep showing up positively, that I can make a difference, even if it's really small. And coming back to the value of Siva, even in moments of extreme pain, made me feel like, what is the service that I can do for my nurses? Like, I can brighten their day. Like, I can be kind or funny. Like, I can joke with them. Like, I can sing at them. Like, I can smile. I can watch, like, Naked and Afraid on my hospital television, like, all day long, and, like, have cool stuff in the room so that when they come in here, it's, like, a positive experience. I can't control what's happening to my body right now, but I can control the way that I treat other people and the way that I show up for this community who's caring for me.
People don't buy from businesses, people buy from people. And I mean, this entire past year, I didn't even have a website or business cards. It was just strictly word of mouth, and you know, you kind of have to put yourself out there and don't be afraid to, you know, speak your truth. Life is so short that even if it does bother somebody, like, it's all going to come to an end at some point anyway. So does it, you know, like, does it really matter if someone unfollows you because you start posting your business online on your Instagram or Facebook? I would say no. Just just be your true self, and as long as you're happy doing what you're doing and it feels good to your heart, and just continue doing that. Don't worry about what anybody else thinks. A lot of people, when they first start their business, they think they need all the licenses up front, and they need to have payroll already set up and accountants lined up and all of this stuff. But when I had first started I had nothing. I hardly had any tools, but I just worked with what I had, and I think that's important for anybody to know who's wanting to start their own business. Is you just go ahead and start with what you have. You don't need, unless it's something like scientific or medical, where you, like an engineer, doctor, or something of that nature, where it is very important for you to have a license, or building an entire building. But cutting grass, or a few branches, maybe painting a doorstep or a door, like it's not rocket science. Exactly. And that's what I say all the time.
It was interesting. Actually, I went vegan, and within a few weeks, I had all this energy and I didn't know what to do with it. So I started noticing I was bouncing around all the time. So I started walking around my house, and actually around the neighborhood, sorry. But I started walking around my neighborhood, and it was about a mile. And I kept walking until I got to 5 miles. And once I hit 5 miles, I would jog in between mailboxes, and then a quarter mile, half mile, full mile. And then one day I ran 2 miles, and that was the first time in my life.
Wow.
And so I kept going that rate, got up to 5 miles, would do that 3 or 4 times a week, and then wanted to learn how to freestyle swim, and eventually got a tri-bike. And then it's been ever since in love with triathlon. And I'll get to the heart stuff. But I saw on a former podcast, I think you and I were both kind of influenced a little bit with John Joseph's
Very much
journey.
so.
Yeah. So the crazy thing, while I'm getting this information from that doctor, I guess because all our phones listen to us, boom, on YouTube, Iron Mind pops up. It's crazy.
It's a great doc,
It's great. I watched that and was like, wow, this is possible. I'm like 45, but this might be possible, and I reached out to, through Instagram, Samantha Murphy, like John Joseph's coach, because I started following Evolve Coaching Systems on Instagram. And just asked very basic questions here and there, and she started following my tile company back, because it turns out she loves tile. So that was cool. And eventually, after I had been running 5 miles whenever I wanted, and really started to feel the lights come on, man, and that love of velocity, that's when I just simply texted her, tell me about this, what would be the next steps if I wanted to do this? And she, this person that didn't really know me, said, hey, why don't you give me a call? I'm available on this day after this time, and we'll talk. And it was great because she didn't try to sell their coaching structure or anything like that. She legitimately said, well, you're close. Keep going with the swimming. Get a watch. You gotta buy a bike. And, after you've acquired those things, contact me back and we'll talk further. So I did. And that was in October of 2018. And so I started getting coached by one of her coaches, my coach, Scott Colby. Shout out to Scott. And he's been my coach ever since.
I've had my vision for a while now, and I've had my goals for a while now, and I've honestly just been waiting for the right team, the right people to come into the company that are visionaries, that want growth, that want to do an awesome job, that want to be the best, because I want to be the best. I want our company to be the best. I want to provide the best quality cosmetic tattoo procedures. And FACE is our new name. So it stands for Forever Achieving Cosmetic Excellence. And the E has a little Asante Gur on it, which helps with my little French Canadianism. So that ties in right there. But yeah, so FACE, it more envisions everything that I'm working towards. So it's about a community. It's about everybody wanting to provide and be the best. I think if we can all strive to be the best as a cosmetic tattoo community, we can stop maybe having to do all these corrections and touching up, sadly, some awful work out there, and provide better services and break some of those myths and, just work as a community together, because there are so many people out there that are just doing free services and not using great equipment and not having proper education. And it's really sad. It's messing a lot of people up. So I think Forever Achieving Cosmetic Excellence means that, we stop at no cost to be the best. And that's truly what it is and what it will be. And I'm excited to see that go far.
When I first moved here, I didn't have a car. That's how I got around, was bicycle. Which is like a whole nother, I can just go to the side for it. It's blew my mind. Yeah. Just didn't realize that what bike culture was or could be, or what an alley cat race is, or it's just pretty incredible. The bike community here is, I think, very supportive and has grown exponentially over the years, and it's awesome. Yeah, and I feel like it feels good to be a part of. I really didn't start riding a bike until I moved to Richmond, and I loved it. It was the reason I started was kind of based out of necessity.
For transportation.
And then the more I kind of got involved with it, the more it kind of became finding out community and and getting involved in more bike related events.
And I know you have been very involved in bike events around the town. What are there any groups that you're affiliated with, or do you just sort of follow along on what's popping up on Instagram?
Yeah, I kind of do that. I tend to ride more by myself, which isn't it's not a statement or anything. It's just, but I think when I do ride, there are some clubs or organizers out there that are doing great things. Emily Monroe is one of them with Mountain Cat. You've got Roll Call, which does early morning rides. Bike Buds are phenomenal people that do really interesting rides. Been on a few of your rides. I think it's great. So I'd say those are some of the groups that I will ride with, and try to be intentional about it. So Broad Street Bullies is another one. I've done a few of their rides, which is, they all kind of have their own vibe to it. Yeah. You know what I mean?
I've always been a traveler. Like my mom put me on a plane when I was like 7 years old by myself to meet up with my grandparents in Spain.
Wow. Okay.
Yes. And I've always loved traveling. I've always loved immersing myself into other cultures and learning new ways of being, thinking. Just almost obsessed with being like a chameleon in the earth, on the earth, and just when I travel, I really like to root down and stand side by side with the people and do what they're doing and kind of understand like what this perspective is. I also have a father who struggled with addiction and substance use, and at a very young age kind of have seen how a lot of what our medical paradigm has said works just doesn't support us and doesn't work. And so at a very young age, I've always thought there must be a different way than what we're being told. And even in college, I studied advocacy and environmental advocacy and had a deep love for the earth. You know, my mom said I was constantly outside, constantly laughing and playing, and just wanting to be outside at all times.
Right.
And then after college, and it was really in college when my mind was blown when I started to learn about structures and different things that I thought were curing things or the answer to things, and how there was so much gray area in between.
What were you studying?
Mainly advocacy, so mainly government structures and how they are and aren't serving us, and how we implement change within those systems.
So is that under the umbrella of political science?
Communications,
okay.
Which also opened my world.
Yeah.
And when I started to understand the theory of the language, not only the language that we speak molds the world that we see, but also the stories that we believe, right? Like the myths that make us, as Eric Gotze says, and how that is a filter with how we experience the earth. Having a mother who speaks 3 languages, I think at a very young age got to have a more contextualized idea of the world, which was really beautiful to have like those other languages incorporated into my worldview.
Yeah.
And I knew after college, like, there was just nothing in me that wanted to go the corporate route. I just was like, I don't think I'm going to do that. I just couldn't get myself to do it. And instead I traveled. I've lived in Chile. I lived in Chile for a while, in Argentina, in Costa Rica. I've worked, you name it, I've probably worked it. I've worked several different jobs, from like serving different little empresas, businesses in Argentina around the city in Cordoba, to digging up malangas in a farm, to like leading retreats and retreat centers, like managing retreat centers. So I've just kind of dabbled a lot and immersed myself a lot in the world.
I grew up in Northern Virginia, and so I would go to DC all the time for shows and to hang out, and there were always these outdoor festivals in the summer that were really awesome. And at one of them, I got a PETA pamphlet, and it was about how animals are raised for food. And I've always been an animal lover. Not that you have to be an animal lover to feel the compassion and empathy for what animals go through, but I immediately was like, I can't eat animals anymore. That's it. And I still lived at home, so that was a little challenging with parents and everything, but it worked out. And then I moved to Richmond for college and met some folks that were vegan, and it took me a little while also, especially because in the early 90s it was challenging. And I'm still eating at the dorms, and then there wasn't an Elmwood Thompson's, there was no soy milk or veggie burgers in the grocery store or anything at that time. So that was definitely a barrier for me, which thank goodness is no longer a barrier for people. So it took me a little while, and I was like, wait, I can't, dairy, eggs, no, that's just as awful. So yeah, so I think for me personally, being an animal lover already, and then learning that information, there weren't any documentaries out yet at that time, but
Right.
That was enough for me, where I was like, I can't contribute to this industry whatsoever.
So where were you getting your information from? Were you like reading books or like just talking to people?
Well, so it was definitely talking to people, and also I would just like get into bands that were into vegetarianism, veganism. So that was a really big part as well.
Yeah.
And then my friends, Elena and Sean, used to volunteer at PETA when it was in DC. So I had a couple of avenues to get some information, but it was really not until I came to Richmond for college and started meeting people, and like then getting, people loaning books to me and us having meetings and just kind of learning in that way. It was really amazing.
I feel so driven by our mission, which is to help 1 million vegans get into the best shape of their lives. And that's because I really, truly believe that the more healthy and fit vegans there are in the world, the faster veganism will spread, which not only, from my perspective, really helps people who go through that transition across a multitude of ways, health being one of them, but also I think one of the coolest gifts that veganism has given me is just a new perspective on the world and understanding really how everything is interconnected. And I've never really considered myself to be like a spiritual person or anything, but I think there's just certain energy that you put out and kind of receive in the world. And for me, veganism is an important part of that. So I think that's really cool. Obviously, we're also by transitioning to a plant-dominant diet, whether that's fully vegan or vegetarian or mostly plant-based, it's all a step in the right direction to minimizing animal cruelty and suffering, which I find to be really important. I see so many people who talk about loving their pets and then they eat a burger. And I would just really love to see more people kind of take a step back and look at that and understand that cows and pigs and chickens are living beings as well, and they have all the same emotions as dogs and cats and other animals we love, and they feel pain, they feel joy, they feel loving connections with friends and family members. And I think I've been on the other side of that. I've consumed tons of animal products. I've eaten lots of meat. I understand what it's like to not have kind of making that mental connection. So I don't vibe with the kind of elitist form of veganism where we're kind of turning our noses up at people who aren't vegan, because I totally get it. But I would just encourage people who aren't yet vegan to work on making that connection. And then, of course, there's the planet as well. What are we doing to our planet to ensure that our kids and future generations have a healthy, vibrant place to live? I think that's an incredibly important conversation. And yeah, sure, let's drive Teslas and plant trees, but what are we actually doing to really minimize the contribution to further climate change? A lot of that is driven by the animal agriculture industry, and that's a pretty straightforward switch, in my opinion.
I try to do some writing every single day, even if it's total crap and I end up deleting it the next day. This week I've been working on that dodgeball idea. I got stuck last night, so I just started started just writing what my thoughts were, free form in real time, and then I ended up on an idea that I'm chasing that may move the idea out of a biographical setting and make it more something that would be a couple of years old, maybe, as far as where the time frame would be. Make it happen in this era, which could fundamentally change the story, and it may end up being something that I don't even follow with. But it's all about that stuff, even if you go into the day having a plan and the plan doesn't happen, you can, or at least I look at it like I'm the one that's given myself these deadlines. I wanted to have another script ready to send out by middle of February, just because that's the earliest that the next contest deadline is. But if I miss that one, then I'm just not in that particular contest.
And it's okay.
It's not the end of the world, and I'll just go back to trying to move the story forward, even if it's only a step. And whichever one catches Flint first, with the two ideas I'm working on, that's the one I'll see to completion. And if it gets done before I can send it off to a contest, I'll do just that.
I am really pleased to have shared an article on Psychology Today about the impact, the effects of sound frequency on our perceptivity, on our ability to be aware of synchronicity. Synchronicity was defined by Carl Jung in his life work in 1950s. Synchronicity is the mere coincidence of two unrelated events but have meaning. And the article that is on Psychology Today is a collaboration between myself and Dr. Bernard Bateman, who's a psychiatrist, on this exploration of sound frequency and how it is a mode to entrain the brain wavelengths in our mind to be able to recognize meaning. And it is our vision and goal that synchronicity can connect people on a soul and deep level.
And that's why I say, like, I've always loved that brand and that tagline that you had, because it's true, man. And it goes to talk about what I was saying before, and I've had the encouragement of my lovely lady to remember not to minimize my experience, because other people are going through certain things that may be more strenuous than mine. But this is my path to life. That's your path to life, and everyone has the right to their own path to life. And we don't have any bearing or response, or people still talk and suggest things, but it's like, it's not your right to tell somebody how to live their life, right? And I've learned that most times, more times than not, someone who is giving suggestions or criticism on how someone carries themselves or how they proceed with their life don't really have a full grasp on themselves. They're projecting. It's like Jay-Z, all of our idols say it. Jay-Z at one point was like, even my uncle told me I'm not going to sell 1 million records. He's like, no, you're not going to sell 1 million records. I'm going to sell 1 million records. And what I do, I sold 1 million records. You got to believe in yourself. You got to believe in yourself. They tell us this in elementary school. Believe in yourself. Believe. But for real, believe in yourself. Because if you don't believe in yourself, why should anybody else believe in you?
The purpose of this film festival is to provide a voice for people who have been previously incarcerated, to amplify their narratives they want to tell, those stories they want to tell. We are the first film festival in the country, probably in the world, that focuses exclusively on the voices of previously incarcerated folks. I realize, unfortunately, after I started this, that there are very few people that have been previously incarcerated that are able to tell their own stories, because there are so many barriers to that. And a lot of people don't want to define themselves by their incarceration.
Right.
I mean, I'm previously incarcerated, but that's not my identity.
Right.
But that's what a lot of people want to hear about. These filmmakers that are previously incarcerated, that's part of their history. And maybe they want to talk about that story or some of the injustices, but they've got other stories they want to share too. They've got other stories they want to tell as well. And giving them a platform to share those stories, to show the general public then that people that are incarcerated, that have survived that trauma, because let's be honest, this is trauma.
Absolutely.
If you survive incarceration, there's not much in life you can't survive. I'm a firm believer of that. If you survive solitary confinement for more than a couple of days, there's not much in life you can't survive. Mm-hmm. And these are people that have skills and talent and voices, and I want to lift those up. I want to allow people to hear those, and by hearing them, by seeing these stories being told visually, because, I mean, you know, film is a powerful medium. You work in film yourself. Mm-hmm. And allowing those stories to be told in this powerful medium, exposing the general public to those stories, transforms those narratives. It changes those narratives that other people have about folks that have been incarcerated. When we change those narratives, we change the way people see folks coming out of prison, coming out of jail, coming out of whatever their encounter with the criminal justice system might have been. It humanizes them, and it allows them to then say, you know what? Maybe we don't need all these extra restrictions. Maybe we don't need to be as punitive, and we should be more restorative as a society.
Mm-hmm.
When you connect with other people, and it might be through supporting a small business by shopping, whether it's just even on social media by sharing their posts, and again, connecting at some level, I think it just reminds us, not only is Richmond great, but that where you live matters, and that you do have impact and you can help others. Because at first I thought I was like, oh, well, I'm helping a small business. And that was the end goal and where it stopped as far as the benefits of a to-do page that hypes up smaller organizations. But then people started messaging me and they said that, you know, when they visited this small business, they actually ended up going to an event and meeting their new best friend in Richmond, or they ended up, you know, feeling less lonely because they thought they were the only person who liked this genre of music, when in reality, there's like groups out there in Richmond who've been jamming for years at Plan 9, you know? Yeah. And I think it's just that connectivity that is really the core of what I do is like, yeah, I just want to connect you with someone that also has your similar interest or likes to do what you do on the weekends too. And like just that sense of like, you're not alone. There's something in Richmond for you. There are groups that have been doing this. And also if there isn't someone doing what you're interested in, then you should start it. And watching that kind of like organic growth of just, hey, I'm interested in this, anyone else, and watching the traction and the momentum build from there is pretty cool.
When I like really reconnected with that passion of art, when I was like 25, I didn't know that I wanted to actually pursue it full time at that time. It's just like a hobby. Like it's just something I felt that, you know, I had to do when I got off work. It just kind of decompressed me. It was just something that I enjoyed. And then it wasn't until I really started educating myself on it a lot more and then just really, you know, just felt completely in love with it, seeing that, hey, I actually can make a career out of it. But there's just ways you got to go about it. You know, just can't just say, hey, I'm gonna just quit my job and, hey, I'm an artist today and like, you know, hey, buy my art. Yeah. You know, it was about trying to create a plan and executing that plan. So basically me and my wife, we sat down and we ended up basically figuring out like how we can go about that. You know, and personally me, I was like, you know, if I ended up finding a place that I can find a community, people that I can actually learn from, connect with, you know, and become a better artist. So it was all about trying to find that in a place. And so, you know, we had a bunch of cities that we would necessarily jot down and try to figure that out of where we could see ourselves living and we could see ourselves, you know, pursuing our dreams. So once we kind of like figured that out, which ended up being Atlanta, it was more or less just trying to understand the cost of living there. how much it would cost, this, that, and the third. And we create a dream fund for ourselves, and with that dream funds, we just set aside a certain amount of money every check that we got until we got a certain amount that we could live off of for at least 2 years, if we didn't make a dime, and we wouldn't have to stress and worry about bills and any kind of like, just any kind of financial burden, right? Because that's like mostly the first thing that people really run into when they quit a job is like, I quit my job, but it's like, oh, dang, I kind of forgot that I got all these other bills that's kind of piling up. And then you start to try to struggle just to make ends meet, so we wanted to make sure we gave ourselves enough room so we can allow ourselves to actually fail and learn from our failures and just grow. Right. So that's where that dream fund came from. So once we actually really saved enough to be able to take that leap of faith, we both put in our notice at our jobs and we all packed up our stuff and we moved to Atlanta, not knowing a soul, just me and her,
Incredible.
And, when we went into June of 2018, we just made it our mission to connect with people, go places. And that's all we did. We just went to a lot of networking events. We just went to different type of circles that had our type of people there, right? Like that were into art, that collectors that buy art, and just really submerge yourself in those scenes and getting to know people and putting yourself into the community and trying to also give back. And, and just one thing leads to another, and I think that's just been 5 years in the making for me, and I'm really seeing the benefits of what I've really put in that effort 5 years ago now, and I mean, I haven't worked for anyone since, since I've moved here, I've been all doing it on my own.
My most recent work on painting, the airbrush paintings that I was mentioning previously, were shown at a Radiant Gallery last year at a solo show there. And that was primarily thinking about like non-gendered bodies and how they navigate through either cis or trans spaces, and how oftentimes, though considered a large part of the queer community, are sometimes excluded in certain conversations or certain circles. So yeah, just thinking about like navigating as someone who has to think about those things pretty carefully, like whether that be traveling to a certain place where it is a little more aggressive, which of course now unfortunately is many places, but when I was producing the work, it wasn't quite so politically on the nose, I think, because it wasn't quite like under the same kind of sordid attack that it is currently under. So yeah, that body of work was totally about like the experiences of a non-binary person navigating social circles.
Does the current political climate give you any inclinations to revisit that topic?
I think it'll probably always be like at the forefront of my mind, but that might be like more of a personal kind of like confrontation than necessarily like how it will manifest in my work. I think that I'm still interested in showing that work.
I have to psych myself out to do things a lot, and so I'll tell myself like, stop complaining, just do it. Like, you could be dead, it's fine. Yeah. Yeah. Like I don't know. I don't really have like a quote or a mantra. I probably should, but I guess when you get down to it, I'm like super lucky to be alive, and I'm super lucky to live the life that I live and have the people that I have. I mean, I'm really, really, really lucky. And so I don't have a motto, but that's what I try to think about is how dead I could be or miserable I could be, like very easily. Like I Could have gone. My life could have gone so many different ways, and none of them good.
We kind of talked about the touring before.
Yeah.
Just this kind of constant piercing and go to a city and drink and party and do all this stuff and go to another city and do it. It was a lot easier for me then, and I've kind of realized this here recently. It was a lot easier for me to do that then because I didn't like my home life. I was in a terribly toxic relationship. Didn't really have anything to look forward to coming home, and so it was really easy for me to stay on the road. I didn't mind traveling all the time. But now, especially with the last couple of years of building and cultivating this life that I actually love and want to be a part of, and my girlfriend, my pets, and my apartment, everything I love is at home. It's a lot harder to go. Fortunately it's not so consistent. We're doing, as it sits right now, like a show every 5 or 6 weeks. But yeah, it gets tough. The mental aspect of it. It's long hours. Usually it's a 3-day convention and then 2 days of traveling on either side. The convention's usually on average between Friday, Saturday, Sunday. It's about 40 to 45 hours of working in 3 days. So it's been kind of hard to keep on top of staying and going to the gym and focusing on my physical health, but it's definitely been a lot more rewarding than it was in the past. And keeping in check of myself and making sure that I stay on top of my therapy is definitely beneficial.
Yeah.
Excuse me. Yeah, I think that's been one of the biggest things is just keeping a pulse on all of it, keeping a pulse on how much I'm drinking, how much I'm staying up late, how much things like that, and kind of being more aware of it than I would have been in the past. And it's definitely helped a lot, but yeah, I definitely have moments where it's super hard to leave, and usually, Caitlin and I are able to talk quite a bit while I'm at these conventions, but for the most part it's just a grind, so it's any city that I'm in, it's pretty much just go for 3 days, and then come back home, try and recoup for a couple days, have a self-care day, skincare, sleep, my nails done, stuff like that, yeah.
The impact. 3 degrees of influence is one that I like to call forward when we talk about impact. And 3 degrees of influence is your habits, your language, your beliefs, your actions, alcoholism, obesity, fitness, healthy living, smoking, drinking, going for daily walks, what TV you watch. It's all contagious to your friends, and back. Now, here's the thing. When we couple that with the law of entrainment, and the easiest way to look at the law of entrainment is the way it was discovered in the 1600s in the UK by a physicist whose name I'm going to respect by not pronouncing. Alexander, something with an H is his last name. And he was laid up sick, and he'd been working on his timepieces. And he had 2 grandfather clocks in his bedroom. And he realized whenever he would put them back together, regardless, they started swinging in sync again at the same rate. They would hit the ends at the same side. And they took this to the Ministry of Science, and they laughed him out of the room. Now, in recent decades, it's been proven that those grandfather clocks were communicating through tiny vibrations sent through their wooden housings, sent and received through their wooden housings. Now, here's the thing. And this is where this ties into the 3 degrees of influence. If you have a shop full of grandfather clocks, a room full of grandfather clocks, they will all fall in sync with the largest grandfather clock in the room. So when we talk about impact to our friends, and being the one that can get to make the positive waves and resist the negative waves coming back, become the biggest fucking grandfather clock in the room. Because then your friends get the impact. And it's not... I ran uphill against this one for ages, trying to, come on, guys, you just need to eat healthy. You just need to think positive. And when I shut up and started embodying it and doing it all for myself and let and it sounds new agey, and it literally is vibration, whether it's the heart coherence that Joe Dispenza talks about or something else, letting my vibration, my pendulum become the biggest, most finely tuned, most accurate one in the room, the impact just happens.
It's a stage 2 or a grade 2 astrocytoma is what it's called. It didn't come from anywhere else. It started very slowly here. That's why I didn't know it was there for so long, until it was just so big it was pushing pressure.
Right.
So they got it all out. And the side of it that's, a little... that kind of sucks is
there will always be microcells in this area from where they cut it out, because it's the brain, everything's connected.
Right.
And it will one day start growing again, return. It's kind of crazy. I've had a lot of time to process it. Some days are harder than others, but it is what'll come back and get me one day, but I'll fight it again. Right now I'm going in, I'm in good hands at Johns Hopkins in Baltimore. And my oncologist, she's great. And she's like, let's get you on some trial treatments if we have to, or, we're going to do an MRI every 3 months. I just had one the other day and no sign of anything regrowing. So that's good news in my book. I'm keep positive with that. And I don't look at it as like a death sentence. It's to hear your own mortality is a little crazy thing to process. It's something you don't really think of you're ever going to hear until it's that time. But when we were told this, Melissa asked if I would see 80, and she said, probably not 80, but you got decades, and I'm more than okay with that, because all it means is decades to enjoy my kids, decades to enjoy my time with my wife, to live everything as best as I can and see the people I grew up with, like yourself. Now, I've not just this. I want to come down and see you, or vice versa. Like, get some time with my people. So, I'll say it gave me a completely different outlook on life. That I don't wish anybody had to go through it, but it's a beautiful disaster.
Movement literally means to change position. And I like to encourage people to change position as often as possible in a variety of ways. So for me, I love taking a variety of movement classes as well. I love teaching movement classes, all of that. And honestly, it doesn't have to be long. It can be 10 minutes. You can be building a sweat, no problem. All of that, sure. Mm-hmm. But movement as a lifestyle is different than taking a class, like a workout class, or going to the gym. Movement as a lifestyle is like, I'm going to make it a point to change position at my workspace multiple times throughout the day. I'm going to, make an excuse to touch the top of the doorway every time I walk out of the door. So that way, I'm reaching my hands above my head, which I might not do otherwise. For me right now, I'm enjoying this journey of motherhood, and my little one is 18 months old. And so I'm seeing this beautiful mobile baby, right? Like, right. Enjoy these very natural movements, like movements that we, all start out with, if we're able-bodied, right? We all start out with these type of movements, like squatting, kneeling, right? And those are not hard movements for us. It's like my little one can rest in a squat for a very long time, right? He can kneel for a very long time, and it is not bothersome. We eventually lose access to these resting poses. Mm-hmm. We lose access to them when we start incorporating chairs that do not encourage movement for long periods of time. So one of my movement practices right now as movement as a lifestyle is literally mimicking my little one. If he is in a squat, getting down on the floor and squatting next to him. If he's like kneeling, one knee is up, one knee is bent, right? Like I'm trying to mimic what he's doing. If he's getting up from his knees, okay, I'm going to get up from my knees. And I'll tell you what, it's a lot of work, right? And but it's so worth it, right? All of a sudden, more hip mobility. Oh, that's interesting. What are we doing now? What are we climbing on? Can I climb up the stairs? Can I do these things? I also spend a lot of time carrying him, rather than a stroller. I love the baby carrier. I'm not saying I never use a stroller sometimes, but the majority of time that he's been around, we have embraced the baby wearing carrier for those types of moments.
I think to see change, you have to be the change, right? Like, I think in the world that we live in right now, with or without my daughter involved, like, I want the world to be a better place. I want people to live better lives, healthier lives, to be their healthiest self. And if I'm going to preach that, if I'm going to push for that, if I'm going to coach people in that environment, then I have to be about that. Like, I have to 100% commit to the words that I'm choosing to use. And I just don't believe in selling a product if I'm not willing to use the product myself. So in the industry that I'm in my own life, that's all I want for myself. And that's all I want for others, is healthy, happy, functional life. So that's my why.
Those folks that are at the end of the race, like, chances are they have trained longer than most people. They have a longer on-ramp, but also they just have the best attitudes. Like, people, a lot of folks in the back of the pack, and I spend a lot of time there because I am a card-carrying member of the back of the pack. But it's nice to be back there sometimes and just hear people's story. I've met some of the nicest human beings in the back of a horrendous race for me. Like, just, I'm having a terrible time, and then, a miscellaneous person from a state I've never been to, and then by the time you hit the finish line, you are a fast friend. So, and that has happened more times than I can count at this point. So I would say the back of the pack is the winner for me.
I like these run groups who are giving back something than just making themselves a run group. So We Off the Couch and Spark Worldwide are both nonprofits, but are just sort of using running as this catalyst to bring people together. And that's what I like about both groups. I also like both groups because they are minority led. I was looking for groups who had the similar skin color as me. Filipinos do not, there's not a lot of us here in Richmond, even though there's a lot, from VCU and kind of stick around. To the core, I don't think there's a big, Filipino community here in Richmond. And so to find a group of folks who had the same skin color as me was very important for me to be involved with. And that was the same thing when I was just visiting Virginia Beach one day or one weekend. I was like, I need to find like a run group here. Like, I was super, into it again because I was doing half marathons, full marathons, like actual training. That's when I found Spark, ran with them one weekend, one Saturday afternoon, and their leaders, Edwin and Joe, are just great guys, great fathers, great husbands. And then I think, for me, that's one thing that I'm looking for is like those like kind of shared values and shared worlds with people. Having a family, having your core kind of community at my stage of my life is really important for me. I am no longer kind of seeking those like one-off casual encounters in a way. The people that I meet now are the people that I want to continue forming relationships with as adults, as parents, as husbands. And so, these run groups kind of help me become, a better person because I'm connecting with, people that aren't the same skin color as me. They might have the same values, which is great, but they are, black, white, Filipino, Asian, Chinese, Indian. It doesn't matter.
Thanks for watching Evolved Podcast. Follow at evolvedpodcast.co on Instagram for for weekly updates. Subscribe to Evolve Podcast on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts, and like your favorite episodes. Production and editing by Joe Fitzpatrick. Our theme music, Endless Cruise, is written and performed by Fingers, spelled F1NG3RS.